I'd been working at a call center for just under a month. My shift started at midnight and running until the sun peeked through the horizon. The job was simple enough: handle custom queries, maintain a script, and keep the calls flowing. But there was something about those late night shifts that felt off. The office was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the low hum of computer monitors and the occasional creak of the building settling. It was kind of silence that made every small noise seem unnervingly loud. But with all those subtleties, I badly needed the money to save up for my wedding. My fiancée and I aren't getting any younger, you see. We met in our late 20s. We spent almost 3 years traveling all of Asia. Just this year, we decided to finally get married and settle down. That motivated me to find a second job, and it landed me in this call center as the schedule is very flexible and the pay was fair for where I was located. Last night, something happened that I can't fully understand. It started with a whisper of a rumor that had been circulating among the older agents. They spoke of a worker who had died at their desk months ago, supposedly of a heart attack. The story was always told in hushed tones, like it was a secret too dark to be spoken aloud. I tried to shake off the unease, but it lingered like a cold draft. I settled into my desk, and I noticed an unusually cold chill in the air. The office's air conditioning was always set to an uncomfortable low, but tonight it felt different. More biting, more invasive. I brushed it off, attributing it to my tiredness. Around 3 a.m., when the office was at its emptiest, I took a short break, stepped out of the cubicle to grab a cup of coffee from the break room, a small reprieve from the endless cycle of calls. The hallway was dimly lit, the flickering fluorescent lights casting strange shadows on the walls. It was then that I saw something unsettling. There, in the corner of the hallway, was an old photograph taped to the wall. It was worn and yellowed with age, the edges curling up. I approached it hesitantly, my heart pounding in my chest. The photograph depicted a group of call center employees from years ago. I recognized a few faces, but one stood out. A woman with hollow eyes and an unsettlingly wide smile. I tried to dismiss it as a prank or an old piece of office decor, but as I returned to my desk, a shiver ran down my spine. The temperature in the room had dropped even further, and the low hum of air conditioning seemed to have intensified. Now a low, almost imperceptible growl. The calls became erratic too. Every now and then a call would come through with nothing but static on the line. It wasn't just static, it was accompanied by low, mournful wail that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. I could almost hear the faint echoes of a heartbeat pounding in the background. As the night dragged on, my fatigue began to set in. My eyes grew heavy, and I struggled to keep them open. At one point, I looked up from my screen and saw her, the woman from the photograph, standing at the dark corner of the room. Only her head down to her chest was illuminated slightly. She wasn't in the photograph anymore, she was real. Her black and hollow eyes fixated on me with an empty, soulless gaze. They appeared hollow to me, but I felt that if she was directly staring at me. To add to the horror, she seemed to be grinning from chin to chin. Not trying to be silly at the moment, I randomly thought she smiled like Jim Carrey's The Grinch, only in a sinister way with a strong and potent evil intent. It's funny how the brain works when this type of moment. In her eyes was a look of madness and deep sadness at the same time, somewhat asking the question, why me? It was the oddest spectacle to see, a weird mix of emotions in the way she stared at me. The wails she produced sounded diabolical. A cacophony of crying and giggling, but ended with harsh crying. I assume maybe because she died confused and had no time to process that she's gone, forever stuck in a state of idleness, with no way to escape. A cruel fate, I must say. I rubbed my eyes, blinking furiously to clear the image. When I looked again, she was gone from the spot where the light illuminated. but the feeling of being watched remained, as though her gaze was still burning into my back. The image of those hollow eyes will forever be etched into my brain. How it stared at me, how it terrified me, how it will horrify my unborn children. Around 5 a.m., just as the first light of dawn began to seep into the office, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A fellow agent, one who had been working the same shift as me, was slumped over at his desk. His face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. I rushed over, my heart pounding, only to find that he was lifeless. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I realized he had suffered a heart attack, just like the rumors had said. I staggered back, my mind racing, my breathing deep hoarse. The photograph, the cold spots, the eerie wells. It all made sense now. The woman in the photo wasn't just a ghost. She was a harbinger, and her presence here was no accident. As the emergency services arrived and the office was filled with commotion, I noticed something chilling. The photograph was gone, vanished from its place on the wall. I'm not even sure if there was really a photograph on that wall, but one thing is clear. I don't think I will be staying at this job much longer. I'm just probably going to wait for this month's pay, then I'm getting the fuck out of here. Whatever is haunting this place is not finished with us, and I don't plan on finding out what happens when it decides that I'm its next call. Update. 2 days after that incident, my neck feels a bit tight, and my chest would hurt at random times when I breathe. Also, I feel lightheaded. Might it be from sitting too long, or something else? In the era of video streaming services, podcasts, and subscription-based content, there's a lonely man playing tunes in the night. That's me. I'm that man. I've been a radio DJ for a few months now, and to tell you the truth, it's pretty mundane. Night DJs are supposed to be your comfort for long night drives. People who work at night are simply for those who can't sleep at night. It's pretty routine what I do. Talking to myself for hours, playing some tunes, and checking the news and current events to talk about. We also have this line where you can call and just chat with me. Explain why you chose this song request, or simply mess around. I'm not one of those love guru DJs that give love advice and all that nonsense. Until one night. It was a very usual night, playing some classics and occasionally slipping in some band-on radio music. Nobody would bat an eye, most people are already asleep. After playing RATM's Killing in the Name Of, someone called from our hotline. It was around 3 a.m., and the caller sounded weird. The line was so distorted and muffled, I didn't understand a thing. I have... sorry? Say that again. Something to... Alright, I'm gonna have to drop you now. Thank you for... As soon as I was about to hang up the call, the line got clear. Play Hotel California, the man said. Before the song ends, there will be a blackout. And he immediately dropped the call. Weird, but okay. I said to myself, thinking it was just some prank. After all, nobody listens to the radio anymore. I obliged and played the song. The words of the caller were lost in my head, and I had completely forgotten about it. Just as Don Felder was about to hit the first note of the solo, the whole building went dark. Could just be a coincidence, right? But I have to admit, that rattled my core a bit. The next few nights were a bit quiet. Classic tunes, song requests, and hours of talking to myself. I started to convince myself that the incident was just an eerie coincidence. However, a few weeks later, I once again received a call. I recognized it clearly despite the distorted and muffled line. "I have another request," the man said. "Play Thunderstruck by AC/DC and witness something electrifying." And again, he immediately dropped the call. Should I play it? Should I not? Is this another prank? Maybe. Maybe not. But in the end, curiosity got the best of me, and I played the song. I waited as the song played, checking my surroundings wide-eyed. Minutes passed, and nothing out of the ordinary happened, until a strong lightning struck outside and heavy rain started to pour. Lights from the booth and the whole building started to flicker ominously. How could this happen? Not wanting to know anymore, I immediately ended my broadcast and went straight home. I called in sick the next night. I had to either booze myself up or pop a pill just to fall asleep. Another night, another request. Play Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell. I got my eye on you. I felt shivers from my head to my back, a lump forming in my throat. Couldn't help but check the windows and see a shadowy figure standing outside in the parking lot. See for Miles by The Who brought about mysterious multicolored flashing lights in the night sky. Time Is on My Side by the Rolling Stones was followed by all the clocks, my watch, my phone, the station's wall clock, and all the clocks in the building stopping simultaneously while the song was playing. But it didn't stop there. I reached a point to where I would just wait and see what song request would bring. Night after night, quest after quest, same caller, different songs. I got addicted to his game. I became obsessed with finding out who the caller was. I pulled out the logs and traced the calls, but they seemed to come from different locations. I think I'm losing my mind. The phone rang again, and without hesitation, I immediately answered. Who the fuck is this and what do you want? There was a brief pause and then he replied, I have another request. Play Time by Pink Floyd. You'll see what I mean. Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. The time is gone, the song is over. Thought I'd say something more. As it played, I started to get dizzy. The room was spinning, my vision blurred, and I felt an eerie sensation as if I was being pulled out of myself. When I came back to my senses, I was already at home, in my room, lying on the bed with my phone in my hand. I checked my call logs and found out it was me who was calling the station. I'd been calling the station myself, but how? I looked around and I saw multiple newspaper clippings, notes, and audio recordings scattered everywhere. Evidence of my own obsession with the mystery caller. Myself. My heart started pounding, my mind racing. How can I not remember? I quickly rifled through the notes, seeing entries of the songs I'd requested, timestamps, and locations I couldn't even recall being at. It was as if two versions of myself existed. I glanced at the desk and saw another notebook open with repeated entries. Who am I? Why can't I remember? Who are you? Am I losing my mind? One phrase repeated over and over. I have a request. My hands trembled as I played back the recordings, hearing myself predict what was going to happen next. The voice was unmistakably mine, but with a deep, ominous tone. I dug deeper, searching for answers, until I found an entry, written clearly, methodically. Time distortion. Possible parallel timelines converging. Intense focus on the show and isolation during late night shifts created a rift in perception. Stress and sleep deprivation exacerbated the effect. Caller persona attempts to guide and warn DJ persona through the cycle, hoping to break the loop and restore the coherence. It was as if my mind was split in two. A desperate attempt to reach out from one version of myself to another, trying to resolve the confusion and break up the temporal loop that had ensnared me. As I stared at the chaotic evidence that lay in front of me, my phone started to ring. It was myself again. Play Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. It's time to wake up. Without hesitation, I started to play the song. This was my chance to wake up and break free. As the song started to play, I realized it was the wrong tune. Hotel California was playing. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. I'd been a security guard for almost 20 years, but nothing could have prepared me for the eerie silence of an old abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town. The building, once a bustling hub of life and healing, had been closed for over a decade. Its walls now crumbling and covered in ivy. Most of the locals avoided it, claiming it was haunted, but I didn't believe in ghosts. I took the job because it was quiet, and the pay was decent, and I didn't mind being alone. The first few nights were uneventful. Only the sounds I heard were the distant hum of the city, the occasional creak of the building settling, and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. I would make my rounds, walking the long dimly lit corridors, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The hospital's rooms were empty, the beds long removed, and the medical equipment left behind covered in a thick layer of dust. But then, about a week into the job, things began to change. It started with footsteps. I was on the third floor checking the old surgery wing when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing down the hall. At first, I thought it might be an animal, a raccoon or a stray cat that had wandered inside. But the footsteps were too deliberate, too heavy. They sounded like someone wearing boots, just like mine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, and strained to listen. The footsteps stopped as soon as I did. I shone my flashlight down a hallway, but it was empty. Nothing but peeling wallpaper and broken tiles. Slowly, I started walking again, and after a few steps, the footsteps resumed. This time, closer. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing down the empty corridor. There was no response, just the sound of my own breathing and the pounding of my heart. I turned around quickly, shining my light behind me. There was nothing there. The footsteps stopped again. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I was a seasoned guard, and I wasn't about to let some old building get the best of me. I finished my rounds that night without incident, but the footsteps stayed with me, lingering in my mind like a bad dream. The next night, things escalated. I was on the second floor, near the old maternity ward, when I noticed something strange. One of the doors, which I was certain had been closed and locked, was now slightly ajar. I frowned, shining my flashlight into the room. It was empty, of course. Just an old dusty room with cracked window and peeling paint. But as I stepped inside to check it out, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The dust on the floor had been disturbed, as if someone had walked through it recently. I could see clear footprints leading from door to the far wall, where they abruptly stopped. My hand tightened on my flashlight, my skin prickling with fear. I had been the only one in the building for hours. There's no way anyone could have gotten in without me knowing. I quickly backed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I checked every floor that night, making sure every door was locked, every window secured. But as I made my way back to my station, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Over the next few nights, the disturbances grew more frequent. Doors that had been locked were found open, objects were moved, and the footsteps followed me wherever I went. One night, I found a wheelchair in the middle of the hallway, its wheels still spinning as if it had just been pushed. Another night, I discovered a light on in one of the rooms, a light that shouldn't have been working, given the building had no power. I started to lose sleep. I would wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of the footsteps echoing in my mind. I became jumpy, nervous, constantly looking over my shoulder. I even started to doubt my sanity. Maybe I was imagining things, I told myself. Maybe the isolation was getting to me. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something was wrong with the hospital. Something that didn't want me there. One night as I was making my rounds, I heard a door slam behind me. I turned around, my heart racing. I saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was dark, but I could just make out the shape of a person. Tall, thin, and unmoving. "Who's there?" I called out, but the figure didn't respond. It just stood there, staring at me, its face hidden in the shadows. My hand shook as I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. But when the light fell on the figure, it vanished. There was nothing there. No one standing in the hallway, no sound, no nothing. I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't even finish my rounds that night. Instead, I returned to my station, locked the door, and sat with my back to the wall, my eyes fixed on the door. The footsteps didn't follow me that night, but I could still hear them, faint and distant, echoing through the empty hallways of the old hospital. I didn't return to work after that. I quit the next day, leaving the keys on the desk without a word. The hospital remains abandoned. It's always still haunted by the echoes of the past, and me? I never talk about what happened during those long, lonely nights at the old hospital. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of footsteps echoing in my ears.